I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. The woman whose world shattered into pieces, whose heart was broken beyond repair by the person she trusted most in the world. But here I am, alone, with a story I never wanted to tell, a betrayal I never imagined could happen to me. To us. My name is Tina. David and I had always been perfect together. At least, I thought we were. We met in university. He was charming, outgoing, and so full of life. I, on the other hand, was quiet, reserved, an artist lost in my own world. He brought me out of that world and into a life of laughter, adventure, and shared dreams. From the moment we met, I knew I wanted to spend forever with him. We got married just a year after graduation, surrounded by family and friends. We were young, idealistic, and we thought we had it all figured out. Our love was strong, our bond unbreakable. We built a life together, a home, a future, everything we had ever dreamed of. I was content. I was happy. And I thought he was, too. But somewhere along the way, everything began to change. It started small. At first, I told myself it was just work, just stress. David's career was taking off, and he was spending more hours at the office. But he would come home late, distant, too tired to talk, too preoccupied to connect. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just a phase, that things would go back to normal once the pressure eased. But they didn't. They never did. The nights grew longer, the silence between us heavier. We stopped laughing together. We stopped sharing our days. The intimacy, the connection, it all seemed to slip away, and I couldn't understand why. I asked him once, I remember, I asked him if everything was okay, if he was happy, if he still loved me. He told me he was fine, that work was just overwhelming. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But something inside me started to ache. I could feel it in my bones. I could feel the emptiness creeping in, slowly, like the tide pulling away from the shore. I wasn't ready to admit it, but I knew deep down that something was wrong. And I had no idea how much worse it would get. One night, after another silent dinner, I decided I would confront him. Maybe it was my gut telling me something, maybe it was the last shred of hope I had left. I'd spent days thinking about how to bring it up, how to ask him what had been going on without sounding paranoid. I needed answers. I had prepared his favorite meal, hoping that the familiarity of the moment would bring us back to a time when things were easy, when we were happy. I waited, my heart racing, as I set the table. When he finally walked in, his face was tired, drawn. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the coldness in his eyes. The distance. "David, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaky, but firm. He didn't meet my eyes. "I've been meaning to talk to you too." That was when I knew. My heart dropped into my stomach. I felt my chest tighten, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What's going on, David? Please, just tell me. What's happening?" His eyes finally found mine, but they weren't the eyes of the man I had married. They were empty, lost. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say something comforting, something to make everything okay. But the words that came out of his mouth shattered my world. "I've been seeing someone else." Time stopped. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. It was like I had stepped outside my body, watching from a distance as everything I had ever believed in came crashing down. My mind couldn't process it. I couldn't even understand what I was hearing. "No," I whispered, shaking my head, as if denying it would somehow make it go away. "No, you're joking, right? You're joking." But his face was ashen, his expression filled with guilt and sorrow. "I'm not joking, Tina. I've been seeing her for months. It just happened. It just happened." Those were the words he said to me. It just happened. The man I had shared my life with, the man I thought I knew, had been lying to me. I had given him my heart, my trust, my everything, and this was how he repaid me? With lies? with betrayal? Months? I repeated, the words barely able to escape my throat. How long, David? How long have you been seeing her? How long have you been lying to me? He couldn't answer me. He just looked away, his face filled with regret, but it didn't matter. It didn't change anything. Nothing could change what he had done. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was being crushed by the weight of his confession. I had given him everything, and now, nothing remained but the hollow, aching pain in my chest. I trusted you, I said, my voice cracking. I trusted you with my heart. I believed in you. And this is how you repay me? You betray me. You destroy everything. Tears started to fall, not just from my eyes, but from my soul. I wanted to scream, to yell at him, to make him feel the pain that was consuming me, but I couldn't find the strength. I couldn't find the words. He reached out to me, but I pulled away. I couldn't touch him. I couldn't look at him. The man I loved, the man who had once been my best friend, had been replaced by a stranger. A stranger who had shattered everything we had built. I never wanted to hurt you, Tina, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. But it didn't matter. Nothing he said could fix this. Nothing could erase the betrayal. I don't want your apologies, David, I whispered, my voice so small, so broken. I don't want to hear how sorry you are. I want you to leave. Just leave. For a moment, he didn't move. He just stood there, watching me, his eyes filled with pain. And I saw it, the guilt, the regret, the sorrow. But it was too late. He had already destroyed us. He had already torn apart the life we had built. And there was no going back. I loved you, I said softly, almost to myself. I loved you with everything I had. But now, I don't know who you are anymore. The door slammed behind him as he walked out of my life. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I had loved him, no matter how much I wanted to hold on, I had to let go. Because love, when it's tainted with betrayal, is no longer love. It's a lie. And the worst part? I didn't know how to live without him. The days after David left felt like a blur. It was as though the world had continued on, unchanged, while I was left standing in the wreckage of everything I had known. I didn't know how to breathe. I didn't know how to move. It was as if my heart had been torn out of my chest and I was left to stumble through a life that no longer made sense. At night, I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the emptiness consume me. His side of the bed was cold, the sheets untouched, and I couldn't stop thinking about the memories we had shared. The laughter, the inside jokes, the quiet moments when we would just sit together and watch the sunset. How had it all turned into this? How had I not seen it coming? I wanted to scream, to ask him why he had done this to me, why he had chosen someone else over me. But even if he were there, even if he could answer me, I didn't think anything he said could make it hurt less. His betrayal had cut too deep, and there were no words that could heal the gaping wound in my chest. Friends and family reached out, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them what had happened. How could I explain to them that the man I had loved, the man they had all seen as perfect for me, had betrayed me in the worst way possible? It felt like a dark, unbearable secret I had to carry alone. The shame, the confusion, it all weighed on me, making me feel smaller, less worthy of love. I tried to keep going, to keep up with my life, but it was like trying to swim in a sea of grief. There were days when I didn't want to leave my apartment, days when I couldn't even bring myself to pick up a paintbrush. Art had always been my escape, my way of processing the world, but now it felt foreign to me. I had nothing to say. My soul felt like it had been drained of color. One day, after what felt like an eternity of pretending to be okay, I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Sarah. She had been there through all of it, through the laughter and the tears, and I knew she wouldn't judge me, even in my darkest moment. "Hey, Sarah," I said when she picked up. My voice was barely a whisper, and I could feel the tears starting to well up again. I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to be okay. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Sarah's voice came through, warm and steady. Tina, I know you're hurting. But you will be okay. You're going to get through this. You have to believe that. I don't know how, I said, my voice cracking. I don't know how to move on from something like this. He was everything. And now I feel like I'm nothing. You're not nothing, Sarah replied, her voice firm. You're everything. You've always been everything, Tina. And you deserve so much more than what he gave you. This is going to hurt, yes. But you are stronger than this pain. You're going to heal, piece by piece. Her words didn't fix everything. They didn't make the hurt go away, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't as broken as I felt. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to rebuild myself from the wreckage he had left behind. The next few weeks were a blur of pain, tears, and quiet acceptance. Slowly, I started to piece myself back together. I went to therapy, something I had resisted for so long, because I thought I could handle everything on my own. But I couldn't. And admitting that was the first step in allowing myself to heal. I started painting again. Not the grand, sweeping pieces I used to make, but small, quiet paintings, colors that represented how I felt, the sorrow, the confusion, and the eventual sense of calm that was creeping in. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wanted to crawl into bed and never leave, but I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I didn't forgive David. Not yet, and I didn't know if I ever would. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. But I began to forgive myself. I forgave myself for not seeing the signs, for not trusting my instincts, for loving him with all of my heart and believing that he would never hurt me. I realized that his actions were a reflection of him, not me. And that was the hardest truth to swallow. Months passed, and with each day, I felt a little lighter. I began to reconnect with my friends, to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. And though I still missed the person I thought I had known, I slowly started to see the strength within myself that I had forgotten was there. I wasn't defined by the man who had betrayed me. I was defined by my resilience, by my ability to rise from the ashes of a love that had burned me to the ground. David eventually tried to contact me, sending texts and emails, begging for forgiveness. He said he was sorry, that he regretted everything, that he wanted us to try again. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. The love I had once had for him was gone, replaced by the knowledge that I deserved so much more than the man who had walked away from me. And as I stood on my own 2 feet again, I realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was a journey. And while I may never forget the pain of his betrayal, I had learned that forgiveness was not about excusing what he did, but about freeing myself from the weight of it. I had chosen to let go of the anger and the hurt, not for him, but for me. I still don't have all the answers. I still don't know what the future holds. But I know this, I am not broken. I am not the woman who was abandoned. I am the woman who survived it, who rose from it, and who, in time, will find the love she deserves. And one day, I'll be able to look back on this chapter of my life, not with bitterness or regret, but with the quiet understanding that sometimes, the most painful moments in life lead us to the most beautiful places. As the months rolled on, I began to rediscover pieces of myself that I had long forgotten. I started to feel like the person I was before I met David, confident, strong, independent. But it wasn't an easy journey. It was a journey that tested me at every turn, forcing me to face my darkest fears, my deepest insecurities. But it also taught me a powerful lesson, that healing comes not in spite of the pain, but because of it. I spent more time with my friends. Sarah, who had been my rock throughout this, was always there for me, whether it was a phone call in the middle of the night or an afternoon spent laughing over coffee. She never judged me, never told me to get over it. She just let me feel, let me process the hurt in my own time. And slowly, I started to feel like I could breathe again. Art became my refuge once more, but in a different way. I started painting things I never thought I would, abstract pieces that expressed the turbulence inside me, the sorrow that I couldn't always put into words. With each brushstroke, I felt a bit more in control, a bit more like myself again. It was as though my soul had found its voice once more, and it was no longer held captive by the silence of the betrayal. But there were still hard days. Days when I would wake up with the weight of it all crushing me, when the loneliness would settle into the corners of my heart like a cold shadow. On those days, I would remind myself that it was okay to feel those things, that it was okay to grieve the loss of something I had loved with all my heart. Because grief wasn't a linear path, it came in waves, unexpected and overwhelming. But it was also temporary. And each wave would eventually subside. One evening, as I sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I thought about David. I wondered if he ever thought about me the way I thought about him, if he ever regretted what he had done. But I didn't let myself dwell on that for too long. I realized that whatever he felt, or didn't feel, didn't matter anymore. The love I had for him was gone, replaced by something far stronger, the love I had rediscovered for myself. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his forgiveness. I had already forgiven myself. And that was all that truly mattered. Eventually, I decided to move. I packed up the life that had been so intricately entwined with David, leaving behind the apartment we had shared, the place where everything had once felt so full of promise. It was time to create new memories, in a new space, with new possibilities. A space where I could breathe without the weight of the past pulling me down. A space where I could be fully, unapologetically me. The move wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned if I was doing the right thing. But every time I walked through the door of my new apartment, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was my space. My sanctuary. A place where I could grow without looking over my shoulder, without the constant reminder of a love that had once been, but was no longer. Then one evening, after weeks of settling in, I went out for a walk. The air was crisp, the streets quiet. As I walked, I realized how far I had come, how much strength I had gained from the pain. I had come to understand that the hurt didn't define me. It was just one chapter of my story, not the whole book. I passed a small park and sat on a bench, watching the children play, their laughter echoing through the evening air. I realized, with a clarity I hadn't felt in so long, that I was ready to embrace the future again. Not with the naive hope that it would be perfect, but with the understanding that I could face whatever came my way, and I would survive it. And maybe even thrive. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope, hope that one day I would love again, not out of desperation or need, but out of a place of fullness, of knowing that I was complete on my own. I would never forget the man I once loved, the one who had broken me. But I no longer needed him to heal. I could still feel the remnants of my heartache, but it was no longer a source of shame. It was a badge of resilience, a reminder that I had loved fiercely and deeply, and that love had made me stronger, not weaker. I was no longer the woman left behind by betrayal. I was the woman who had learned to rebuild, to rise from the ashes, and find her strength in the most broken places. And maybe, just maybe, the journey I had been on wasn't the one I had chosen, but it was the one that had shaped me into the person I was always meant to be. I had learned that while love could break us, it could also be the force that helped us heal. The sunset that evening reminded me of something important: life goes on. Love, in all its forms, continues to evolve, to change, and sometimes, it blooms in places we least expect it. I had loved once. And while that love had shattered me, I knew now that I was capable of loving again. But this time it would be a love that was deep, true, and rooted in the strength I had found within myself. And that, in the end, was all I really needed.